Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this year's annual online Vernon User Group meeting. This year we actually ran in-person user group meetings in both Australia, in Sydney, and in New Zealand in Christchurch. And that's the first time we've been able to run those in-person events in both countries since COVID. So it's great to have those in-person events back up and running again. We've also found we've been able to get back to attending international museum conferences, which is a great way for us to network both with prospects and existing customers. So today I'll be giving an overview of what we've been working on over the last year. So one of the main things we've worked on over the last year is the release of the next major version of Vernon CMS, and that was Egret 12.50, which was released at the beginning of the year. That focused on changes in two main areas. The first was in the person database, where we've added a number of new fields and made some of the existing fields allow multiple entries. So for example, there's now new fields for sexuality, and there's multiple entries in fields like gender. The other area we worked on was XML import. So that's the tool where you can import structured data into Vernon CMS to either bulk update existing records or create entirely new records. That's increasingly being heavily used by many sites to do bulk imports, either migrating data from legacy applications or adding a whole lot of new data from things like Excel spreadsheets. So one of the main changes you can see is now that XML import screen clearly shows you all the details of the record you're currently on. So we can see here I'm importing a person record, and that makes it easier to understand the context of any errors that Vernon CMS identifies during the import process. So all of the data is still fully validated as you're importing it, and Vernon will flag any issues and show you options for how you can deal with those problems. There's also better support for a wider range of data types, including date fields when you're importing data. We're now currently working on the next major version. So the versions are numbered with just a sequence, which is 12.6 for the next version, but they're also always given a code name, which is an alphabetic sequence. And so this year we're up to Fantastic Fantail. So some of the changes that are coming up in the next version, firstly, we've added fields for supporting call numbers for library collections. So that's a new table that appears on the library screen where you can have one or more entries. And then we've also added support for series title. The request for series title originally came in from the library sector, and we built that into the library screen, but we've since had requests from art collections asking for the same field, so we've extended that to also include the field on the object identification screen. So those are fields that have already been built, and so that'll be part of the next version. The other major area we're working on is options for bulk deleting data. So sometimes you've got information which needs to be cleared out of the system, but the volume is too large to do that manually. We're adding in two new functions, the first of which allows you to bulk delete a group of records. That function will only be available under system maintenance. So for many sites, that's only going to be the supervisor that has access to that. But you might have a whole lot of records that were created in error, or redundant or duplicate records that need to be deleted, and you'll be able to just save a list of those and bulk delete all of those. Secondly, the bulk update screen is going to be extended so that you can do deletes or clearing of fields through the bulk update screen. So you might be clearing fields for a subset of records, maybe only in a particular circumstance. So all of the other IDs that have a particular type are maybe incorrect, and having an option to bulk clear those. We've also published our longer-term roadmap on our website, and so that shows what we're working on at the moment, what we'll be working on next, and what we've got planned in the slightly longer term. So I've described what we're working on at the moment. The next things we're looking at are improvements to valuations. That includes support for decimal valuations, better support of foreign currencies, and a built-in report for doing valuation totaling across collections. We're also going to be improving the deaccession fields so that many of those will support multiple entries, both in the object file and in the related deaccession activity file. Lastly, we're going to be adding options to better check for duplicate people records and deal with those duplicates. So that roadmap's now available on our website. So I could click on that link there. And that's just under our product section under Vernon CMS. And so that gives a bit more detail on each of the individual elements. So a lot of that I've just covered now, but if you want to go back and read that detail at any point, you can see it on our website. Some of those changes are also already in progress. So we're already making progress with supporting decimal values for valuation. So there's a couple of sites that are really keen to get that. So we're working hard to support that in all of the different places in Vernon where valuations are entered. That's quite a complex change because we have many different calculated fields for valuations as well as bulk update tools. And so all of those need to correctly support the new decimal values. In parallel to that, we're working on the major upgrade to the next version of Open Insight. So that's the underlying database that Vernon CMS is built on. And so in parallel, we're working on version 13, which is the version that will be running on Open Insight version 10. And that's going to give us better performance and some access to newer functions that are available within the development environment. Things like automatically scaling windows with a plus and minus zoom, depending on what font size you're wanting to appear on your particular monitor. We'll also continue getting upgrade support from the vendors, Revelation Software, when we move to that. At the moment, Open Insight 9, which we're based on, has reached end of life, and so we need to move forward to the next version to be able to get continuing updates in the future from Revelation Software. We're also working hard on the security of the system. That's both in the software that we build and in our day-to-day processes. And there's a few different ways that we do that. We follow different security news sites just to see what security issues have been identified and all of the things that we make use of. Networking software, the Windows platform, and different components. We look at how those security issues can be addressed, and that sometimes involves us changing the development in one of our systems or advising clients to apply a certain patch. Or in systems that we host, like Vernon Browser and Vernon CMS for some of the clients, we then automatically apply those updates. A couple of years ago, we started on our own information security policy, and that's now very detailed. And if there's any clients that want a copy of that, we can email that out to you. But that covers how we manage all of our different security processes. One unfortunate side effect of that is that the costs that we incur from Amazon, the hosting platform we use for Vernon Browser, have slightly increased. Currently, we charge $110 a month for hosting, and that's going to increase to $120, and that's just directly passing on the increased costs that we're incurring from Amazon. One of those increased costs is that we now make use of an Amazon feature called the Web Application Firewall. That's a whole extra layer of security that allows us to automatically block all kinds of malicious access to Vernon browser sites. So that's things like automated programs that are just trying to scrape all the content off a browser site for their own unknown use. So with the Web Application Firewall, we're able to do a lot more automatic blocking of those people and stop them even accessing the content. But there's costs for us using those services within Amazon, and that's what we're recovering through the slight increase of the browser hosting costs. We've also gained several new clients in the last year. So Victoria Racing Club, which has a huge collection of photographic and physical horse racing memorabilia. Manly Regional Art Gallery Museum, Bayside City Council, and in the UK, the Society of Dyers and Colourists. This is an extensive collection of textiles and the different materials used to dye those textiles. We're constantly working on new online collection sites for our clients, and so this is a list of some of the projects that have recently been completed. We're about to launch a new site for Society of Dyers and Colourists, and Manly have also already launched a site, even though they've only just adopted Vernon a couple of months ago. We are getting some sites that are using Vernon Browser as a middle layer between Vernon CMS and some other product that they're using to build an online website. Auckland Museum is a bigger example of those. So if I click on the Auckland Museum link, that'll jump me across to their website. And so this is entirely built by them and their development team and external developers, but it's pulling in the data for the online collection directly into their main website. That's a complex task because they've had to rebuild all of the different tools that we would normally produce in our browser front end. So I could search for something like ice axe, and then they present an advanced search results page with options for search filters. And so that's copying many of the elements that we would have within the browser front end, but building it within one single integrated website. And so I could click on one of those ice axes, and all of this data is coming from Vernon CMS, published to Vernon Browser. So Vernon Browser is managing the publishing process, using things like calculated fields to change the format of some of the data. It's managing the resizing of the images, and it's managing the security and caching layers to provide access to the web to all of that content. We're also starting to work on intranet sites for Vernon Browser, which we host. So two recent projects that have gone live are Mona, the Museum of Old and New Art in Tasmania, and then the University of Melbourne. University of Melbourne has an extensive pathology collection, an anatomy collection, and a lot of that includes human remains, human specimens, which are extremely sensitive. So that's been made possible through an intranet, which we're hosting on their behalf with secure access only to specific people at their end. We're also adding in embedded content into more and more of our browser sites. So that's rich content that people are creating and uploading to third-party platforms. And provided that content has some kind of web player, we can embed that content on the appropriate object records. So this is an example from the public University of Melbourne website, which is again using Vernon Browser. If I click on that particular collection record, we can see underneath the description that it has embedded 3D content, and I could click on the 3D link to jump to that content. And so in their case, they're using Pedestal, which is just a third-party platform where you can upload 3D models. Sketchfab is another similar platform, and they've just included a link to the relevant 3D object back on the object record in Vernon, and that means I've now got a viewable 3D scan of that particular item. It typically takes us about an hour of chargeable development to embed a third-party player into a browser website, so that can be things like Vimeo or YouTube videos. It might be sound through platforms like SoundCloud, or 3D content, like in this example. We're also getting more people making use of the topic file. That's part of the activities module in Vernon, and it lets you describe some kind of contextual article which links together all of the rest of the content in Vernon. So that can be something which is grouping together a collection of objects, some people, subject categories, and so on. So this is an example of one of our clients, Nelson Museum. And we can see on their homepage that topics is one of the sections. They're showing the first most recent 6 topics on the homepage, or I can click on view all topics to see all of the topics that they've created. And then for any of those, I can click on those, and that data is coming straight from Vernon. So it's allowing the catalogers to create and manage that content permanently in Vernon and make sure that that's archived regardless of how it's used in the future. And then each of those topic records links to one or more images, an article which can embed formatting using the Markdown standard, and things like related objects. So that's grouping together 3 different objects in their collection underneath that particular article. Vernon Browser has also had a new minor release, and the changes that we've done within there are to support maps. So you can publish latitude and longitude coordinates for an object and embed a map for a particular object. If I go to our demo site, we can see an example of one of those embedded maps. This is a natural science specimen, part of our plant collection. And we can see down the bottom of the page the embedded OpenStreetMap view of where the latitude and longitude for that particular plant, where it was collected from. So that could be both collection locations, but it might be subject locations or production places, other examples where objects might tie to a particular point on the planet. And then the second thing we've done with that minor release is improve the support for PDFs. So that includes building in a PDF viewer for the object detail page. So here we can see an example of a collection record where I've embedded a Wikipedia publication, and also automating the publishing of PDFs through live updates like we already do for images. There is a file size limit at the moment, which is around 40 megabytes, but many of the clients we work with have small public access PDFs that can still work within that limit. There's also been a minor update of 12.5 within Vernon, and that's to support the live publishing of PDFs. So that's something where we've done an upgrade on the browser side, but there's also been an upgrade in Vernon CMS to support that half of the update. The other project we're working on with Vernon Browser is the support of high-resolution images, and we're building that as an optional separate service. So that's a service where we can host very high, very large resolution image files. There is a storage cost there for us, which we pass on, and that's why we're making that an optional separate service. And we're building it using the IIIF framework. That's the International Image Interoperability Framework, a standard for how high-resolution images are stored, processed, and viewed. Part of that service has to take the source image that you've got and automatically convert it into a special format that IIIF uses. And that provides high levels of access, drilling down to specific tiles of images as you go into the detail. We're also considering having e-commerce as a phase 2 option, where you could enable the paid download of the highest resolution image on specific records. The publication of a high resolution image might also depend on the rights of the object. So that's something we're having to consider, how you flag on a particular photographic record, what level of image access there should be. We've got a lot of the foundation of that new service already in place. So I'll click to our live demo of that through our development environment. As part of building the service, we've been testing converting source images into the web versions that we use, using a variety of different formats to see what achieves the best results. So that's a compromise between the speed of which it can do those processes and the ultimate size that it creates as a web version. And here I've uploaded a high resolution image of a rack of different spices. And so I could click into that image, and it's a huge image that is hundreds of gigabytes in its original size, but very quick to use within a web browser because it's using that tiles concept where we're seeing just one single small image for the outer view, and it's only pulling down the smaller details as it needs to. The other project we've been working on is the redevelopment of our online help. So Penny, over the last 18 months, has been rewriting all of the Vernon CMS Help in a new help tool. And that's something we've been doing for a variety of different reasons. The content we have on the existing site is getting outdated in some areas, and the design itself is getting dated. The navigation's not always clear. So, for instance, there's a division between basic and advanced topics, and it's not always clear whether the thing you're looking at is in one or the other. The site doesn't work on mobile devices, so if you're wanting to open up help on your phone, you'll still get the full-sized view and won't easily be able to read things. And then also we've optimized the new content for readability. So just making use of language and styling that makes pages easy to scan and easy to read. And so some of the core principles of that new site are that it's user-centered, so centered around the things that people are wanting to do rather than the languages and the functions directly in our system. So translating their requirements to the right process within Vernon that'll answer that question. Cross-linking between topics as much as possible. So if people are reading about a particular topic, they might see relevant things that they're wanting to browse into as well. And then also supporting mobile devices out of the box. Part of this project involved a lot of research with existing users to understand how they write their questions when they're searching help sites, and whether the structure we were creating on the new site actually organized the content in a way that they could easily find it. So Penny did a draft information architecture, and that was tested with a whole set of existing users to see whether the organization of that information made sense to them. And so I'll switch at this point to the live site, which launched on Monday this week. So this is the new Vernon CMS Help website. It starts on the homepage with 6 very broad categories to jump you into certain areas of the help, including a new Getting Started section. So Getting Started covers all of the key aspects of the system, how the basics work, what are the key things of terminology that we use, and how some of the basic principles are set up. So I can click on how Vernon CMS works, and it'll give me a description of key concepts like records and fields and windows. So that's all available to you now. You can go to help.vcms.vernonsystems.com to get to that new help site. And version 12.6, when it's released, which we're expecting to be early next year, that will automatically embed that new help when you're clicking on F1 or Control F1 to access the help. So that covers what we've been working on over the last year.